Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Connor. It looks like we have a lot of people joining the call now.
You want to do introductions while we wait for Steve?
Yeah.
And then once, like, if he's still not here by the time we're done, I can do a brief introduction into I.C.H.I.P.S.
Great.
Cool.
Our host is running a little bit behind, so we're going to just do some more introductions. We've heard from Connor and from Alice and from Isaac. Looks like we got Les Hall from the Mountain Mighty. Hi, Les. Sue and Matt from Independent, California. I got Caitlin Reed, Dr. Reed from Humboldt State. Taria Smith from, I think that's a native news outlet. Taria, would you
I'm with News from Native California Magazine, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. Let's see how we can do this in an orderly fashion.
I think if you click on participants, you can just go down the list.
There we go. Okay. Ricky Prouse.
Yeah, this is Prouse.
Would you like to give us a brief introduction while we're waiting for our host?
Yeah, my name is Ricky Prouse. I'm a board member on the Mighty Summit Consortium. And this is the first meeting that I'm going to. I'm really excited to be here.
Great.
Hear what people have to say.
We're excited to have you. Carolyn Smith, can you hear us?
I sure can.
Awesome. Would you like to give us a brief introduction?
Sure. Aiki Kura. Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Smith. I'm from the California Indian Basket Weavers Association. I'm excited to be here today and hear the speaker today. I hold a PhD in anthropology from UC Berkeley, and I've been working with Kaduk basket weavers for the past 12 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Carolyn. M. Johnson just joined. Would you like to give us a brief introduction? We'll come back to you. How about Harry Mathiasen?
Hi, I'm Harry. I grew up in Napa, and I'm just here to listen and try to envision new and old, I guess, ways of treating the land.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Harry. We have Joy Holland.
Hi, my name is Joy Holland. I'm the librarian at the UCLA American Indian Studies Center, which is on Tongva land, and I live on Tongva land. I'm originally from Hawaii Island in Hawaii. I am non-native, but was raised on Kanaka Oiwi land, and it's my pleasure to be a part of this and these listening sessions.
Thank you so much, Joy. Julia, is it Fivash or Fiviash? How do you pronounce that?
Hi, it's Fivish as far as I know. Yeah, I'm a UCLA grad student. I'm studying library and information studies at UCLA. I was invited here by Joy. So I'm here and listening and excited to see what you guys are going to be talking about today.
Awesome, thank you, welcome. Dr. Reed from Humboldt State.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Caitlin. It's my second year as a professor at HSU. I'm in the Native American Studies department. Right now I'm teaching like 150 STEM freshmen that Native people are still alive. And that if they want to do environmental science, they have to know about TEK. So that's what I'm doing. Working on a book. It's called From Gold Rush to Green Rush, kind of tracing waves of settler colonial resource extraction from gold to timber to fish and now cannabis. Up at HSU, we're working on the HSU Food Sovereignty Lab. I'm the assistant director for that. And then I'm a member of the Yurok tribe. I'm also Hoopa and Oneida. So happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. Les Hall.
Good morning, everybody. Les Hall, Mountain Maidu, Plumas County, part of the crew with Ricky Prowse. Just able to join. I was at actually the first of these sessions and missed the last couple, but I'm here today and look forward to the conversation going on. There was something that took place actually yesterday evening that I think is a really great opportunity, is that Audrey Denny, who's running for representative seat here in this district, feed into Native American issues, and I think that at some point a conversation or invitation for her to join this discussion might actually be something of a benefit. She's very open to these discussions. So anyway, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Thank you so much. That's a great idea. I hope we can get her connected somehow. Malcolm Montour, is it?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So my name is Malcolm. I'm a graduate student at Humboldt State, and I will be working on a project. We're partnering with two Native tribes in Humboldt County, and so I'm just here to learn and listen. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Let's try M. Johnson again. Are you there? Can you hear us? No, still no luck on M. Johnson. Malcolm, or sorry, we had Malcolm. Marcus.
Hi, Marcus Ruiz Evans, part Choctaw, part Comanche, some cousins on the scrolls, but really a Californian, and looking forward to us doing the right thing. I'm with Yes California, and I love to publicize anything that happens here to our network of 160,000. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Matt Owen, brief introduction, please.
Hi, I was born and raised on Yuviatom territory, not a drop of indigenous in me, but infamous accomplice, I guess you could say. They finally got back their sacred springs, the Yuviatom did, but Nestle is still stealing the water, still. So I recently moved from Yuviatom territory to that of the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla. And it's the outstanding success that they've made of co-governing the cities of Palm Springs and Cathedral City with the Agua Caliente Reservation that inspires us to plan for a very similar achievement for all of California, okay, a plurinational federal republic.
Thank you, Matt. Can we have Sue give a brief introduction, please?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I'm here. And I am just listening and learning a lot at these listening roundtables and really enjoying that experience. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Sue, for joining us.
Yeah. Good.
All right, our host still has not arrived. He's actually meeting us in person here in Chico, but we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of a preface with Mel Figueroa. She and Allie Mettersnight of the Machupta Maidu hosted our last listening roundtable, and they're responsible for the introduction to Steve, who is heading a group, a consortium of nations running traditional ecological knowledge trainings, which is what we're going to be doing today. So I'll let Mel give you a little bit of a background, And all of this session will be recorded and on the Return California website, returncalifornia.org. So please keep it casual. Any questions that you have, please put them in chat. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. And please keep yourself muted unless you're talking. I don't want to be the one keeping everybody muted. So without further ado, here's Mel Figueroa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mel Figueroa. I said I work here in Chico. And I just want to give a brief sort of overview as far as I know, in terms of how we met Steve and CHIPS, and how we formed what we called ISHWI, the Intertribal Stewardship Workforce Initiative here in Butte County, in the wake of the Camp Fire in 2018. So a little bit of background. And some of you might know this who work around here here in Butte County. With the Camp Fire, when the Camp Fire happened, basically tribes are instructed to work with Cal OES and Tetra Tech, which was the contractor that Cal OES and Cal Recycle had contracted to do cultural monitoring. And so that was like in the first phase of the cleanup, the debris cleanup. Tribal members worked under a private contractor to for cultural monitoring, which is again pretty standard. So phase 2 of the debris removal happened, which is tree removal. And so that's when we first got contacted by Steve, because Ali and I had just started to develop this TEK training program for workforce development. So, you know, at first it was, you know, CHIPS was, and actually Moortown Rancheria were going to pursue a tribal carve out for the tree removal contract for the Camp Fire, which they had done before. They'd had experience in doing what do you call it, a sole source contracting for forest management with the Forest Service, I believe in Lassen, and in Calaveras County and Amador, and I think over the just over the state line in Nevada. They also worked with the Washoe tribe, and Steve can talk a little bit more about that part of it. But this was a little different because this was disaster recovery. So we thought that, there were 2 reasons why they wanted to get Mechoopda members involved. Number 1, because it is Mechoopda's MLD land, which is Chico and Paradise, mostly, as well as the Concow Band. I don't want to not mention them. They're not federally recognized, but their territory was also affected by the fire. So at first it was kind of like a job training opportunity for local members here, and you know, and also a job opportunity as the cultural monitoring contracts were expiring and people were starting to get out of work. So excuse me. So they sort of proceeded as, you know, it was kind of a straightforward process, and then of course got a bunch of resistance from FEMA and Cal OES, who basically rejected the bid for a carve out of 20% of the work it was going to be, which is what the sort of combined capacity of the initial, you know, couple of tribal nations involved had capacity for. And they were basically kicked back and said, no, you have to bid for our contract just like everybody else, like a contractor. So so that's when other folks started to get involved, and we started to have this conversation around, you know, what is, you know, what are the rights and the rights that tribal nations have when it comes to disaster management. Those of you who are probably dealing with FEMA and Cal OES right now know that, you know, in a state of emergency, FEMA has a lot of the final decision-making power, even though according to the policies, 30 days after a disaster, a tribe does have the rights to issue a disaster declaration, actually, if their tribal territory falls within a declared disaster area. Now, this is where part of the looking at the policy is really interesting and presents a sort of opportunity for some collective action around this, because especially with the number of fires that are burning around California, the entire state of California is now under disaster declaration. And where tribes have been directed before to only file a disaster declaration if it touches tribal trust property, as many of you may be thinking right now, that presents a unique problem for tribal members in California who don't necessarily live on tribal trust or reservation lands. This is the same case with the Mechoopda, who had members who lost homes in the fires, as well as other Butte County tribes. And so we attempted to pursue a consultation through Cal OES's new tribal consultation policy. A lot of these, I believe this is Steve right now, but let me just finish my point and then I'll run out and greet him. Is that we basically read the National Disaster Recovery Framework, the California Disaster Plan back cover to cover, looking at the sort of letter of the policy and where on what grounds that tribes can pursue carve outs for environmental restoration and tree removal work and forestry work outside of the just the sort of cultural monitoring process. And so what we found is that the 2016 amendments to the Stafford Act after Hurricane Sandy included tribes as public agencies, which of course they are. And so this is where, again, the sort of policy meets practice and conflicts there, because especially after such a devastating environmental disasters such as fires, and especially because tribes in TEK have a very special relationship to fire and have something a lot to contribute. Tribes were not being outside of cultural monitoring, right? Tribes were not being included or their rights respected in terms of being public agencies, meaning having a seat at the table when it comes to the planning and contracting process. Every single time that we did a number of things. So it was I think 3 out of the 5 Butte County tribes, as well as C.H.I.P.S, the Hungalalti Washington tribe, and the Intertribal Council of California decided to sort of form an ad hoc organization called the Intertribal Stewardship Workforce Initiative and start trying to assert tribal government's place as public agencies who are affected by this disaster area. So we pursued a number of avenues, first writing a bunch of letters back and forth, but also we went to Sacramento and met with Christina Snyder, the governor's tribal advisor, to talk about sort of this gap in policy practice. And this is absolutely a place where tribes should be at the table in terms of disaster recovery and mitigation. Again, not just monitoring the dead stuff, but taking care of the living stuff and the recovery process. After that, again, the response from FEMA and Cal OES was basically just bid like any other private contractor and was not, and so under Cal OES had a brand new tribal, or not brand new, I guess it's from 2017, tribal consultation policy, where tribal governments could request a consultation to talk to Cal OES about, you know, policy matters that affect them. So we wrote a number of letters along with policy appendices. Gerald Jones at the BIA was very helpful in terms of, you know, looking up the regulations that that, you know, where we could push for this. Then COVID hit, so unfortunately, there was a whole other thing. But I mean, to the state, Cal OES and FEMA have not responded to this request for consultation, except to say that that they will not consult and that tribes will have to go through the regular bidding process, basically putting them on the same status as private contractor, where that is not the appropriate government to government relationship. So that's where we're at right now. But of course, now with this fire season, there's a lot more imperative, I think, and opportunity to push collectively for again having more say in these tree removal processes. As many of you who live in post-fire zones know, you know, a lot of the work that the private contractors do is really terrible, bringing in a lot of non-local workforce. So yeah, that's, you know, one of the things we're fighting for. I'm gonna go check if it's not Steve.
That was Chico's truck.
Oh, was it Chico's truck? Okay. I'm gonna, yeah. So if anyone has any questions, said I'm still sort of looking out for him. Sorry, he's driving up from Amador County today, so it's a few hours drive.
Quite a trek.
So.
I don't see any questions in the chat. Do anyone on the call have any questions for Mel about anything she just talked about? Please raise your hand or put a note in the chat. Nothing. All right. Please.
Is anybody interested in sort of you know, helping us collectively push, you know, this time in this fire cycle for tribal carve-outs? And one of the things that we also understood this time around is that it's not just about a tribal carve-out in the contract. This is also where, again, the you know, tribal members and tribal government's authority as TEK practitioners, you know, can really help affect what the environmental restoration and recovery process should look like. This is also one of the things that the lessons that we learned from you know, this fight with FEMA was that you know, even in the RFP process, the specifications are just, they're not ecologically sound, right? Is it, you know, barely by you know, conventional standards, if not, and certainly not by TEK standards. So this is another, I think, opportunity and you know, I guess rightful move is for you know, tribal governments to also insist on having their rightful place in the planning and RFP process for all contracts. You know, what's part of the vision that, you know, Ali and I have had for especially given our experience here with the campfire, is that tribes need to have a say you know, in anybody who touches the land, especially after a fire. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Mel, for all of that information. C.H.I.P.S is I guess officially the host of today's meeting. I wanted to quickly return to the last roundtable that we held last month. Immediately following the roundtable, Return California had 3 different requests 4 MOUs regarding the traditional ecological knowledge processes. And one of them was very exciting. It was a gold mine claim in Nevada County that was managed by BLM. It was declared a disaster site, a Superfund site. All kinds of heavy metals left over from the mining process. An old reservoir that had been filled in with all the tailings. And the owner of the claim requested an MOU, and the process of cleaning the reservoir utilized mining equipment. They were dredging out the reservoir, throwing everything into the sluice box, removing all the heavy metals, the arsenic and the mercury, along with about 30 grams of gold a day. And to run the whole site, it cost them about 15 grams of gold a day. So they were making 15 grams of profit daily. And now they're planting, keystone species, native plants, all around the perimeter of what will eventually be a reservoir again. And because it's BLM land with the tribal affiliation, they're able to remove city, county, and state oversight from the project, which gives them an incredible amount of flexibility about what they're doing. So in the process of cleaning the reservoir, not only are they getting gold and removing the heavy metals, but they're also getting building materials, sand, gravel, rocks, and stones that are all usable in traditional building. So this site will serve as kind of a demonstration site, and any tribe that's interested in doing something similar with gold mine claims in their area can pretty much just cut and paste whatever it is that they need to do to make a similar project happen on their land. So very, very exciting stuff.
I also saw in the chat there were some folks who wanted some clarification on definitions on like TEK and tribal carve out. So TEK is, for those who don't know, is short for traditional ecological knowledge. Again, the knowledge held, the place-specific knowledge held by tribes who have lived in and co-evolved with the same place over thousands of years. A carve-out refers to essentially a sole source contract that is like part of a larger contract. So for example, what issue we was going for with the campfire tree removal contract, the number of trees, total trees on the job kept changing. It was like 100,000, then it was 300,000, but et cetera, et cetera. And so what Cal OES was going to do was break it basically into two separate contracts. It was initially a $450 million contract. They were going to break it up into two chunks, so 50% and 50%. The combined capacity of the tribal nation, as well as with CHIPS, as well as all of the tribal members and the transitioning cultural monitors that we thought we could train to at least do some of and certify to do some of the work. I think we certified about 50 or 60 people in preparation to 12 Sawyer certifications. So the combined capacity of these tribes as well as CHIPS would amount to about 20% of the total workload. And so that's what we were asking for was in the pre-contract process to set aside 20% of the work, which would have been anywhere up to from 40 to $90 million, given the gigantic size of FEMA contracts for this work. One of the I also want to mention, of course, one of the things that we are also learning about are these contractors that FEMA uses, which I guess in the industry are called ambulance chasers. So companies like Tetra Tech and Phillips Jordan and these giant corporations that basically are always awarded the FEMA contracts. We can speculate as to why. Has been the norm for post-disaster recovery for a long time. Tetra Tech, whose two of whose contractors went to federal prison for faking data on a nuclear site in San Francisco, was awarded 7 out of the last 10 fire recovery contracts. So, and this was a huge problem, because especially in a place where we had so many people displaced from the fire, there were 5,000 out-of-state contractors who were coming in and taking up all the housing. So, it was one of these things that tribal nations could take the lead even in alleviating, some of the post-disaster problems for the entire community by putting people to work, putting tribal members to work, and also local community members who were willing to work with the tribes. So, so COVID actually has presented is kind of an advantage on this, in this disaster cycle, in that, it's not really viable anymore to bring in out-of-state contractors or mobile contractors to do this work. So, wherever you all are in your MLD, in a disaster zone, this is an opportunity to, to be able to assess, capacities, to partner up and to go for some of these carve-outs. It's probably more possible now than it was back in January when we were doing this. Do you have another question?
Yeah. What is MLD?
Oh, MLD, sorry. MLD is most likely descendant. So ancestral territory, which it covers a lot more area, of course, than current tribal trust land.
Awesome. A lot to download here. Anyone have any questions for Mel, myself, or any of the other participants in the conversation? Still waiting on Steve.
Yeah, he's almost here, but he might be lost, so I'm going to give him a call.
All right, Mel's going to check in with our host. Apologies.
Can I say something? I'm not good with this computer, and the chatting thing isn't working for me because I'm just not good at this stuff. This is Kraus.
Hi, Ricky. Go ahead.
Well, the Midas Summit Consortium just got a whole bunch of ancestral land, and we're trying to do a whole bunch of TEK stuff, and we just had a meeting last week up there. We had a whole bunch of scientists and, college people or professors and stuff like that. And one of the ladies that was there, I can't remember her name, I have her card, but she just invited us to do a whole bunch of TEK jobs around the state of California. Our only concern is that we have people that can do it, but we just, we don't want to send our mighty people to, say, Machuca Place to work. So it sounds like you guys, I need to work with you guys a lot more and get more involved because there's things open for us, right? Did I say something sad?
Oh.
And
Carrie, Carrie, you're not muted. Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah. So anyways, and we did have a fire up on our 2,000 acres like 2 months ago. And since there's a whole bunch of tribal people out there, we were out there working, we got the fire out and we only lost 17 acres. And now we're watching the land come back. We're studying and checking it and seeing what it's going to do. We pretty much know, but now we're documenting it so we can show everybody else. So I invite any of you guys that want to come and see what we're doing. You can come up to the property. It's Tasman Koyom. That's what we call it, or Humbug Valley. And just listening to you guys, I'm really excited. And once I figure out this computer thing a little bit better, I can type my questions and you don't have to listen to my voice. So thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, I want to extend an invitation as well. We are kind of starting back up again as C.H.I.P.S after a long hiatus with COVID and all of that. We're having a Zoom meeting on next Friday, October 16th, in the afternoon. If you're interested, you can email tekstewardship@gmail.com. That's sort of the quick email address we had thrown up when we realized we had to like send a bunch of letters to FEMA and stuff. So if you email that, both me and Allie will get it and we can get you added to the Zoom meeting. We have a few more folks joining us for that meeting. So this is expanding outside of Butte County. I think the C.H.I.P.S is talking to some of the couple of the Mono and Paiute tribal governments. I believe that someone from the Forest Service Tribal Relations Task Force is going to join, and a couple folks from Lake County Eco Restoration Alliance may be joining us. So, this is a exciting opportunity to all, work together, and because this is now a, turned to a statewide force that the governor can't ignore, and the lawyers and all of them, they can't ignore us. So, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about that one. An exciting action we did in one of the campfire restoration planning meetings with Cal OES. We had about 50 people who were doing the S212 training, and we paid them a visit in the planning meeting, and basically said, we're here. There are people who are ready to work. They're tribal members who have knowledge of the area and can do a much better job than some out-of-state contractor, and are ready to do the work. So that was a kind of cool little direct action that we did as well. And so we're definitely on their radar, and I think this is a good time to move.
Can you tell us again what C.H.I.P.S stands for?
The Intertribal Stewardship Workforce Initiative. I don't think it's an official entity yet. We're just sort of a coalition, but we can explore a deeper institutional development with any new partners we have.
Intertribal state
Stewardship Workforce Initiative.
Reason I wanted clarification for that is because of Ricky's commentary about giving mighty workers to other places. C.H.I.P.S is all about training programs. So if there is a tribe that needs assistance with traditional ecological knowledge projects, including educational projects, their workforce training initiative will allow tribes to have access to trained workers. So that's the goal of the initiative. So sticking with Ricky's example, the 3,000 acres that they have in Humbug Valley could be worked on by people who are not from the area, but who are trained in traditional ecological knowledge practices. And in working on Ricky's project, can train his people in those same principles. And then they can go and train other people so that this thing just continues rolling as we move into the future. So I put the Intertribal Stewardship Workforce Initiative acronym in the chat so that everybody can see what that is. And that initiative should be launching very shortly.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a website. We're like an ad hoc coalition that was pursuing this contract, but now that again, there's a lot of work coming up. Again, like I said, Steve himself is coming from I think a job site that you know so there's no like institution yet, no website, but there can be, I think, you know, part of our what we're going to look at on the 16th is whether this thing has legs to expand to other areas that are affected by fires now, and you know what would be the best structure. So this is really good time to get in on the ground floor of planning and to help shape this, because you know, as we know from TEK, every place is different, every place has a different relationship to its people, and and all, you know, wherever work is done in California especially, but also everywhere of course, you know, tribal nations need to have a say in what happens.
Totally. Thank you very much, Mel.
Steve will be here in 5 minutes.
5 minutes, Steve will arrive. Any questions from our group? Does anyone on the call have any experience with TEK? Maybe not specifically called that. Melanie, did you figure out your microphone yet?
This is Ricky again. I was trying to get my muted, and I do have some TEK experience. I've been building fires most of my life and putting them out, and live off the land a lot. So yeah, I kind of know what I'm doing.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah. I have no.
Yeah, sorry, we got a tractor coming by here. Yeah, it's we're meeting outside, so.
Good times.
Sorry, repeat your question one more time. Sorry, or your last sentence.
If you're asking me what my last sentence was, it said that I'm not very good at this computer thing.
Oh, okay. But yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Melanie, I got a chat from you. Oh, you haven't figured out your microphone yet. Melody says that she is an elder and knowledgeable in TEK. I wanted to make time Um, did anyone else lose audio? I got something from the chat.
Yes, I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Can you all hear me now?
This is Ricky. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I was just asking if anyone from CIBA would be willing to take a couple of minutes while Steve gets situated to talk about the importance of traditional ecological knowledge in basket weaving.
Thank you. I'll start, but I'm going to ask Alice to chime in here really soon as she's
Great.
shaking her head.
Thank you, Carolyn. Go ahead.
Sure. So as California Indian basket weavers, we do have a close relationship with the gathering areas from which we get our plants that we use for basketry. You know, anywhere from pruning and coppicing to you know, digging roots and pruning in that respect. You know, so we have this knowledge that, you know, has been passed down from weaver to weaver for generations. You know, and I'm going to ask Alice to speak a little bit more, but when it comes to fire and those cultural burning practices, it's key to the maintenance of our plants and for the survival and thriving of certain plants that we use in our baskets that are really vitally important to our baskets, particularly like hazel and beargrass. And I know there are other species in other areas that are fire adapted that do need that low temperature fire to happen. But now I'm going to turn it over to Alice, who's probably still she's exasperated, to talk a little bit more about what one of our programs is, the Following the Smoke too.
Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Hey, so thanks, Carolyn. I'll get you back. So Carolyn kind of told a little bit about, you know, what fires bring to us and what they mean to us. And as basket weavers, you know, a healthy fire is something we need for our baskets. It's something we helps make them stronger, but it has to be a healthy fire. It's not a disastrous fire or a very, very high heat fire that wipes out everything, because that's not helpful for us at all. And there is a lot of burning programs in place within Northern California. We just want to figure out what else we can do to enhance those things and make them better and make them working more than what they do now to promote, to be able to help a disastrous fire and work with them, as well as while we're doing that, we're working with the weavers to be able to get, you know, really good materials. So our Following the Smoke program, that's it kind of explains what it is we follow the burns. And by following the burns, we get really strong materials to work with. And, you know, we really work close with agencies, and they're extremely helpful for us here in Northern California. So we're hoping to promote that program everywhere. Because we have a really strong program here, and we're trying to make it, you know, fires has unfortunately become like to me, like a worldwide epidemic. It's not just in the state of California anymore. There were so many fires everywhere this year that resources were limited, and some of the fires were going out of control because we didn't have resources to fight fires. So, you know, it's getting pretty scary for people, and we're working really hard to try to figure out a solution for it.
I think that's a place where TEK can definitely serve a purpose. We really like the idea of basket weaving being a medium for communicating the essential nature of this knowledge. And any of you that were on the last roundtable or watched it online may have seen what Ali and Mel were talking about in regards to basket making, and how the basket itself contained all the wisdom that the ancestors had passed down. And that kind of was reiterated in Alice's recent comment about how that traditional knowledge was passed down. I thought it was a really beautiful image that the basket not only held whatever products you were gathering or carrying, but also the wisdom of tens of thousands of years of ancestral knowledge. So thank you, Alice, for that. We got Steve here. He's getting situated. Anyone have any questions before he gets started?
Could I make a real quick comment, John?
Yeah, please.
I just talked to Peggy Berryhill of KGUA Indigenous Radio. She regrets that she won't be able to come, but she's very aware. In the chat room, and you have it in text, John, she would like to interview the people who support this idea of returning back land to the indigenous, starting with federal land. You have the information. She has a couple dates, and she really wants to share the video whenever this is up, John. If you could get it to her, you have it in email. She wants to share this video. She wants to promote it, and she wants to interview people. I put a comment in the chat room for everybody. Please contact John at Return California, and he can schedule who's going to go and what. But Peggy is on board. I talked to her for a few minutes. She loves the idea and wants to promote it and wants to do more interviews. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcus. Please direct your attention to the chat, everyone, if you'd like to be interviewed for the radio program, KGUA with Peggy Berryhill. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Steve Wilensky from C.H.I.P.S, which is the Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solutions. Healthy Impact Product Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve. Glad you could make it. Speaking to the mic, please.
All right, sure. The name Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solutions doesn't really describe us anymore. That was 16 years ago, and it was a tortured way to get the acronym. But we've been working now. C.H.I.P.S is a nonprofit that began in Calaveras County as a result of the closure of 16 mills, and that left our towns pretty destitute. There was a whole lot of division in the community. These are the Blue Mountain communities of West Point, Wilseyville, Glencoe, and Railroad Flat. There was a lot of blame going on. People said, well, angry ex-loggers and mill workers were saying it was the spotted owl and its environmental friends that caused the disaster, and environmental folks who were very active in the area had talked about greed-based resource extraction and cut and run. And still other economic analysts said that when you hitch your wagon to a one-trick pony, it will eventually go off an economic cliff. And that one-trick pony was the housing market, which was inevitably going to have a bust at some point. Anyway, I had been elected county supervisor on a reform ticket that was designed to try to reconcile all of those things. And we developed C.H.I.P.S in a meeting that invited former loggers and mill workers, all three Miwok tribal organizations in the area, and all the environmental groups in the region to sit down and talk about what to do. And as it turned out, we had more in common than anybody knew. And that's what formed C.H.I.P.S and ultimately the ACCG, which is now a 12-year-old forest collaborative that includes a wide range, 43 different organizations, including most of the land holders, federal, state, and private in our area. But CHIPS took off with the idea that we should re-employ people from hard-hit communities and give people certifications and training and equipment to go out and build a forest economy based on restoration and stewardship as opposed to greed-based resource extraction. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but it took us the better part of 5 years to break through with the U.S. Forest Service, BLM, and even private landowners to convince them that this was possible and that we ought to fund it. We got Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Act status, and that brought in about $15 million to our area, and that's when we really took off. And that's when we got the money for the Forest Service, they in turn began to explore local contracting. Not an easy task at the time. Today, CHIPS holds I think $6 million of contracts with 4 U.S. forests: the Humboldt-Toyabe, the El Dorado, the Stanislaus, and the Tahoe Basin. We also have crews from the Paiute community working in Yosemite, which was a major return. That was some of the people are actually the daughters and sons of people who were evicted from the valley and had their village burned to keep them from moving back, just a generation back. So going back and taking out parking lots and turning them into meadows, taking roads in the Mariposa Grove and turning them into trails, and fixing some of the mess that people made in Yosemite is something that's been both spirit lifting and a significant boon to the community. So we now have 50 employees, full-time employees, from mostly tribal communities that include Miwok communities in Tuolumne County and Amador and Calaveras, Paiute communities in Mariposa, and Mono communities in Fresno County, as well as our kind of flagship crew is the Washoe Hung LLT community in Alpine County. There are all kinds of spin-offs to this. We have recognized that just doing stewardship and restoration has to involve traditional, not just certifications for sawing and burning, getting red cards and Basic 32 and S212 training, but the TEK work that people are doing in tribal groups has to be brought back to practice in the U.S. Forest Service. Another initiative that we're doing, we've had a long relationship. BLM was our first contractual breakthrough about 12 years ago. And we have developed a pretty close relationship with the regional office. And one of our new initiatives is to develop good neighbor under the Wyden Act, good neighbor relations between tribes that are adjacent to BLM properties, where BLM actually fails to manage ancestral lands. And with the crews that are developing through ISHWI and the tribal workforce, do stewardship agreements with those forests, ultimately with the goal of repatriating land to the tribes themselves. It's very clear that the Department of Interior is never going to have the resources to manage these lands, and they are actually constituting existential threats to the people who once managed them quite well. So I think there's sort of an opportunity for a historic turnaround and some small level of justice. The tribal lands that we're talking about right now are places where people have been relegated, people who once had all of Lake Tahoe down to Yosemite, are now on 80 acres of sagebrush on the eastern slope. That needs to be remedied. And, there are just all kinds of implications to this. I don't anticipate it to be easy, but that's an important initiative. A second initiative is that we also are recognizing that you can't live off of federal budgets in the middle of an impending economic catastrophe, and that we need to develop independent economies that are also part of restoration. That means using the small diameter wood that's being taken out of these forests and turning them into value-added products. So we have bought an old mill site, and we have gone through, let's see, 6 years of permitting and all kinds of negotiations with PG&E, and we were ready to build a 3 megawatt power plant under SB 1122 when PG&E declared bankruptcy, and our investors decided that this was a little shaky. I'm pleased to say that now we've weathered that, and we are ready to construct. So there will be on an old mill site, there will be a 3 megawatt power plant. We're intending to also use the heat from that plant to run a greenhouse that will produce native plants that will be used to restore cultural sites. That is also part of C.H.I.P.S domain. And we are also doing what we are calling Blue Mountain Soil Elixir, which will take another byproduct of the electricity, the biochar, mix it with, this is probably a gross thing for you non-rurals, but if there's anybody like that on the phone, but we're taking turkey manure, basically turkey shit, biochar, and forest humus, which is a byproduct of, when we're selling chips for landscape and other things, but there's also fines and other things that you can use to produce what we're calling Blue Mountain Soil Elixir. And it turns out that grape growers and other growers in our area are pretty keen on having a finished product. So there are other things that are contemplated long term, so that we don't we never hitch our wagon to a one-trick pony again. We're trying to diversify this value-added thing and have a full suite of products that would come out of this, knowing that at any given time one may be more lucrative or valuable than others, but that there will always be something. The contract that we got with PG&E, the power purchase agreement, which is signed, calls for 19.97 cents per kilowatt. That's pretty good. And we're very pleased that the legislature decided, in some kind of fit of smart, they actually realized that the value of electricity produced from small diameter wood was greater than just the electricity, that the mitigation against fire and the restoration of health and the sequestration of carbon has value all to itself. And that together was agreed to be 19.972 cents a kilowatt. So there we have it. That was a product of about 10 years of arguments and some degree of years of lobbying in Sacramento. Anyway, that's a quick synopsis. We're now ranging from Fresno County all the way up, and today we're talking to folks from the Machupta and other Maidu crews that have had their projects burned out. The fires are way ahead of our restoration efforts, and we spend a whole lot more dealing with catastrophe than trying to prevent it. But in a particularly cruel set of circumstances, there were a number of contracts that were just beginning up this way, and we had certified 43 people on S212 from a variety of Maidu organizations. And people had begun working in some sections, but now every single one of those projects has been burned in the fires this year. So today, in an act of solidarity, we found work for people who are laid off in Yosemite and a campground for people to go to, working with the Paiute crew, and also up in the El Dorado forest with the Washoe crews. They're all welcoming people in, and we'll see how many people want to travel and camp as long as it doesn't snow. But at least there'll be some work in the coming weeks.
Awesome. There's a huge amount of information that you just shared there. Definitely requires a much deeper dive. I'd like to encourage everyone on the call to interact with each other, with Steve, and with Return California. We are happy to facilitate those conversations, and we are in the process of compiling a database of all of this information so that people can check in on whatever level they're interested in. Do we have any questions from the group for Steve or Mel or anyone else on the call? Please either raise your hand or put something in the chat. The video from this conference will be posted on the returncalifornia.org website immediately following. And I will also be meeting with Steve to try and compile a list of projects that he's involved in so that we can pool resources and get some people trained up to train others and to do this vital work. Ricky, you have your hand up.
Okay, finally I figured it out. Okay. We're also doing some work up there too. Actually, tomorrow we're going to be up there working on the land up there, and we would like to invite people to come up there and work too. And we have a campground that we opened it, and then it closed because of fire. But we're opening it and letting people camp there that want to work up there and stuff. It's in Plumas County, just 8 miles south of Chester. I'll put my my email number and my phone number in the chat thing if any guys want to contact me. And I'm really glad. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty excited about some things that you guys are talking about. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Could I add one comment that I forgot to make? Yeah, you're good. I would like to add one comment, which I think is an important byproduct of our work. Those divisions I talked about, where people were actually throwing chairs at each other in community meetings and fighting over who was to blame for our mess, actually resulted in a sea change politically in our community. Instead of having a knockdown, drag-out fight between economic progress and environmental restoration, we actually managed to heal some of our politics, and we have been electing progressives. I won in landslides, 2 successive landslides against all kinds of money and timber interests. I know some of you are probably attached to nonprofits and can't really talk politics, but I have to say that the problems that we have in this country in rural communities are that they have been left for dead, and no political party has addressed it. And if you're going to stop being resource extraction only, you have to figure out what these conversion economies are in coal fields, in timber towns, in former industrial heartlands. We suffer a national problem as we ignore those issues of collapse of proud communities that have every right to exist, and yet have no political solutions that are healing. And to me, this is a national issue, not just for our area, but I can see it in the coal fields of West Virginia. I can see it in the industrial Midwest, that we ignore the extreme and grinding rural poverty that exists in the wake of the collapse of our industries. And sure, people are going to blame somebody, but can we have a healthy discussion and come out with progressive solutions that actually employ people and do environmental stewardship? that's our challenge nationally and in our area, and I hope that we've made a small contribution toward getting those solved. We have had now 8 elections since my first one, and it has completely changed what used to be. I guess, you know, many people thought of us as knuckle-dragging troglodytes, cave-dwelling folks in a backward politics and ignorant as we could possibly be. That is not what rural people are. But, you know, we've got to come up with creative solutions for these kinds of things. And that's not even getting to the question of how do we recover from genocide and the cultural obliterations that were attempted. So we've got a lot of healing, we've got a lot of work to do, and one of those elements will be environmental stewardship and traditional ecological knowledge.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. On that note, I'd like to draw people's attention to our second roundtable, which was hosted by the chairman of the Amamutsan Band of Ohlone in southern Monterey and Santa Cruz counties. He informed us about a consortium of tribes across Turtle Island who are establishing land trusts for their tribes to get land returned. And that is one component in this conversation that Return California is continuing to promote and will continue to promote until this is the norm, not the exception. We cannot heal ourselves without healing the land, and we cannot reconcile with the horrors of the past without healing the land. So we are on an amazing path, and I've never been more optimistic about the future of all of these efforts. So with that, we are going to wrap a little bit early, unless anyone has any questions or brief comments to share with the group. And then once again, I would really like to encourage everyone on this call to get involved with your local communities, with your local tribes, and promote this knowledge and encourage other people to get engaged. We have a question from Matt. Please keep it brief.
Well, just an observation from here south of the 36th parallel, sort of the contrasting cases of the people on whose territory I was raised, the Uviatom versus the Cahuilla, where I'm at now. The Uviatom got chased out of their ranges in the Bear Valley Massacre, and which is how they ended up in the reservation today. They're partners with us, accomplices to a city that got hit hard with deindustrialization. And so we're trying to find new paths out of that. Okay, so that's where I was. Where I am now is Palm Springs, half of which is on the Agua Caliente Reservation. They are outstanding stewards.
Sorry, Matt, you cut out there for a minute. Did everyone else hear you?
I heard him, yeah.
Okay, good. Something happened on mine.
Yeah, the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla are outstanding stewards. All one has to do is go up into the canyons up behind Palm Springs to see evidence of that. They are outstanding stewards. And Morongo was actually a trading village between the two, between the Uviatom and the Cahuilla. So they do have contact. It goes back a long time. So there's TEK.
Thank you for sharing, Matt.
It's just a matter of finding it and encouraging their participation.
If I can weigh in everything, I actually am Cahuilla. My late aunt was from Agua Caliente Reservation. I'm from Torres Martinez Reservation.
Oh, okay. You're just south of us then.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
The southeasternmost of the Cahuilla bands. So yeah, there is a lot there and everything. So yeah, it's good that you're plugged in.
Well, trying to get plugged in.
Sounds like Taria and Matt have a conversation to have.
I also have a question as well. In our research, when we were when ISHWI was dealing with disaster recovery, we did hear about another intertribal consortium that had formed, I think based out of San Diego, that was working in disaster recovery. Are you involved with that? I can't remember the name right now, but it was another sort of intertribal ad hoc consortium that had formed for disaster recovery in particular. Guess not. The woman from Korea.
That message was for you, Taria, that question.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Oh, I've heard of a intertribal consortium that had formed for disaster recovery, specifically like in Southern California around San Diego. I was just wondering if you were involved with that or knew about that.
I'm not. I am familiar with what it is you're talking about. Probably, I think you're probably talking about the tribes like for back in the mountains, like Santa Isabel and Paula, and a lot of those tribes that were impacted by the fires and everything like that. You would probably want to start with the Paula Band. They actually started their radio station because of for fire security. When they got it started up, it was to alert people about fire dangers and stuff like that. So they're really in the thick of it. So you would probably want to start with the Paula Band and find out a little bit more about them. And then the other thing, to Matt's point about the canyons and Agua Caliente and all such as that, what I would say to do if you would really want to take a look about stewardship, take a look at pictures of the canyons before the tribe was given back stewardship of those canyons. It was terribly polluted, graffiti all over, artifacts and rocks and everything, trash everywhere. If you look at pictures in the 1950s and 60s and everything like that, before the land was given back to the tribe, it's really, really terrible and sad to see, but it's a wonderful example of what happens when land is repatriated back to tribal communities.
Thank you so much. I know those the fires that like started out of Zeus and Hop Mountains. Unfortunately, that's in disputed territory. There's no less than 4 bands that claim the whole thing, and that kind of impedes the ability to carry forth stewardship. When you got a dispute raging like that, none of them has a reservation even, because they all claim all of the Gabrielino. So that's kind of a, to say the least, a hindrance to be able to exercise stewardship when you got 4 bands disputing who would be the stewards. I don't think we have that problem out here, but they sure do over there. And that's right where that huge fire was on that territory.
Yeah, you're right about that, Matt. There's a lot of those kind of intertribal conflicts around the land, and I think Steve touched on a way to kind of smooth over those conflicts by having a resource injection into the land that's in dispute and giving all the people who have a claim to that land access and resources to steward it, where they have to work together in order to get the resources that they need to fix the land. So I would like to invite everyone on the call to email returncalifornia@gmail.com with any requests, any suggestions, any references that you think are viable candidates for these processes. And I also invite you to look at the website, returncalifornia.org, to watch the previous roundtables, and to stay tuned and ask your colleagues to stay tuned for the next roundtable, which will have very specific actionable items that people can do in their area to gain access to these resources and to establish training programs to kind of predicate that resource allocation. So without further ado, I'd like to thank Steve for joining us. Oh, hold on, Mel has one more. Put it in the chat.
If you're interested in coming to, to ISHWE and interested more in learning more about ISHWE and possibly joining, you can email us at tekstewardship@gmail.com.
tekstewardship@gmail.com. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and stay tuned for all our ancestors.